The oral history of the tribes on the California coast talk about Catalina Island being the island of wizards.
The native Tongva oral history tells of a tradition of wizardry, shamanism, and supernatural exploits on Catalina. Stories abound of potent black magic, wizards capable of bringing plagues on their enemies, and shamans who lived hundreds of years with a power so strong they could bend trees.
This clip from the documentary series In Search of Giants from the History Channel claims that the peoples of the Channel Islands were renowned for their witchcraft and supernatural abilities, but there is no evidence to support this claim. Therefore, what is the truth behind the witchcraft and esoteric beliefs of the peoples of coastal Southern California? This film will focus mainly on the Chumash and Tongva peoples and their beliefs in witchcraft. As stated by John M. Anderson, the Chumash understood they, quote, did not reside in a protected utopia, but lived in a world impacted by greed, witchcraft, and sins of the flesh, unquote. They believed in the idea that everything, from a living being to a tree or body of water, could contain a spirit called a nunashish. In Western context, this would be called a demon. If a human being is to come in contact with one of these sources containing this energy, it would be overwhelming, it would make them mad. It would be the people around them reacting that would determine their fate, either being seen as a very spiritual person or in need of cleansing. Today we would diagnose these people as suffering from a psychological issue. The Chumash resolved these possessions by giving the afflicted many types of medicine, one of the most notable being datura, where they were said to have seen the gods, and the experience curing them and leaving them so moved that they would not ever take it again. Where do witches fit into this belief system? The Chumash believed in the duality of magic, white magic and black magic. White magic would have to do with using supernatural powers for good, such as a shaman using his power to cure disease. It was associated with the daytime, sunlight, good health, and the North Star, while black magic was associated with using those powers for evil. The witch or evil sorcerer preferred to use poison on their victims. Its use relates to the Chumash idea of free will. Poison is not inherently evil, rather it is the way the individual uses it. One important poison that is mentioned in many sources is tusot, a black stone that saw much use in the rituals of Indigenous Southern California. One of its earliest mentions is in the myth of Wiot, the tyrant of the talking speakers of Southern California, who submitted many villages under his rule. Many of his captains decided on killing him by using it. They entrusted Gugumel, the burrowing owl, to carry this out, rubbing it on part of his body and killing him. The subsequent pyre would lead to Chinich, the messiah of Indigenous California, teaching the people how to worship and live righteously. The Tusot stone is associated with the waterworn pebbles or concretions found on the beach. One interesting anecdote refers to the Akashaman people of southern Orange County finding one of these stones in the center of a fish that had washed up. Another example of witchcraft was seen in the Chumash legend of Princess Wainimi. Her husband was led astray by an evil woman who had learned black magic from a sorcerer, and in the story she burned black feathers and recited incantations to sway him over to her. Some place names were associated with witchcraft, one example being the village of Hecap, around modern-day Cuyama in inner Santa Barbara County. It was infamous for its witchcraft, one source stating, quote, the people of Hecap were very wicked, very much given to witchcraft. Almost every person in Hecap was a sorcerer, unquote. Then there was a cave where many claimed that a bear medicine man lived, chasing people away and frightening them, at a place known as the House of the Sun, in modern Red Mountain, northwest of Ventura. A southernmost village in Santa Rosa Island was called Nilalhuyu, where one source claimed it, quote, was a town celebrated for its sorcery. No women or children were allowed in this town, only men, unquote. Yet mission baptismal records say otherwise and disprove this claim. What evidence is there for witchcraft and sorcery in the archaeological record? Surprisingly, many artifacts have been found that may have been related and even used in these practices. Steatite effigies of whales and canoes were carved and used by Chumash seamen as talismans. They would wear them, keep them hidden, or place in pouches, as it was believed that the magic would only work on the owner, and it was buried with them. Shamans also used effigies, but the magic contained in them was far more dangerous. Thus they were hidden away in rocky crevices, only to be used by the holy person during rituals. Another interesting piece that was discovered in a private collection was a small figure carved from whalebone, crudely shaped to resemble a human, with no arms or legs, only a head, neck, and what appear to be hip-like protuberances. Its facial features consist of 2 holes for eyes and a slash for a mouth. There is also a perforation on the midsection with what appear to be faint rust marks, as it was believed the figure would have been nailed head down. Although there is no evidence on the figure of any pressure marks that would have suggested this, in the Tongva tradition, figures like these are attested to, being hung head down by shamans from holes, also carved in their midsections to cast spells to cause illness or death. Also in this paper, there is mention of a 2-foot-tall wooden figure found in Ventura County, that even had articulated arms and legs, believed to have been twisted to cause a corresponding affliction upon the person on the receiving end, like a voodoo doll. Unfortunately, not much more was said about this artifact or its whereabouts. With the arrival of the Spanish, Christianity was imposed on the natives of the region, and thus many traditions had to go underground, such as the ones mentioned. Any traditions that did not conform were labeled witchcraft and viewed with hostility. Some natives became irritated because they were forced to reject their beliefs and accept the new faith, one village being that of Shapshivit. One woman, named Toiparina, and sources referred to as a witch or holy woman, was asked to cast spells against the Spanish who oppressed them. She also used her position, with her brother as chief of the village, to gain support and more followers to rebel against the Spanish. With their force of Tongva warriors, they marched on San Gabriel mission with the intention to kill its leaders. Once they scaled the walls and descended into the priests' quarters, Spanish soldiers attacked and captured the rebels. While the warriors were flogged as an example, Toiparina and the ringleaders of the plot were questioned further, and they were sent to other missions. Toiparina was exiled to Mission San Carlos Borromeo, where she died in 1799. With the arrival of Europeans to California, much of this sacred knowledge was lost, whether it be through repression of beliefs or many individuals with the knowledge succumbing to the many outbreaks of disease over the century. What we know today about this subject was recorded in ethnographic accounts from interviews of indigenous individuals who had knowledge of these beliefs, passed down from generation to generation. Thus, it is also important to acknowledge that some of the aspects of these superstitions and spiritual knowledge still survive in these peoples today, in their familiarity with the various medicinal uses of native herbs, and in the dances, rituals, and legends they retell and do to this day.